I'm 𝐉𝐨𝐮𝐫, and you're listening to What the Heck Fintech, where you'll experience and learn that fintech is Fin Life. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. We have quite the episode for you today. A little different angle here we're going to talk about on What the Heck Fintech. We have Bernice here. Now, Bernice is an American student that went to school over in Europe, graduated with finance at Netherlands.
Yes, University of Amsterdam in Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. So we're going to get all different perspectives, right? Plus, because you went to school over there. Plus, you're newly in the job market. We're going to talk about that too, and how what's that going, and how you got there and stuff, because you graduated last May. And I met Bernice. She's a finance major, and she was focused on fintech. And we met at Boston Fintech Week. She was volunteering there, and we met. And I'm actually I'm fortunate enough to be her mentor in the Mass Fintech Hub mentoring program too. So we're having a blast, just figuring stuff out. And I think she's mentoring and coaching me. Because the knowledge and the maturity she has is amazing, and the stories that she has. So I won't do it justice. Bernice, I'd love to give me a little player profile. How you grew up a little bit, where you grew up. I know you traveled a lot too, so and we'll hit those pieces too. But that and in your finance undergraduate degree, I'd love to hear a little bit of your background.
Yes, so I'll after so far I was watching like the art of you like preparing for the studio, and kind of thinking about like how I also wanted to tell my story, because I feel like I think back to my life, and I actually don't really, I think, tell a lot of people about like my story unless if they're like more so close to me. And I was thinking, you said something about like having like an elevator pitch and escalator pitch, and then more of like a longer pitch. And so I guess for this answer, I'll give you more of like the escalator pitch.
Nice.
And yeah, so my name is Bernice. I am originally from a small town in Massachusetts called Drake, Massachusetts. And my parents are originally from Cameroon and Sierra Leone, so I'm first generation American. And when I was like 4, my mom joined the State Department, and so my family and I essentially started to move to different countries like every 2 to 4 years. And so the first country that we moved to was Malawi in Southern Africa. It's like Southeastern Africa. And then from there went to like the Congo, and then like the DRC Congo, and then went to Cameroon for a few years, went to Sri Lanka, went to, after that, Bahrain. And then after that, I moved to Amsterdam for university. So that's more of my background in terms of, I guess, like where I lived. A lot of the, like, I think experiences that I had in life, a lot of the different places that I saw, the different like cultures, I feel like I was fortunate enough to really like experience, or at least like get a taste of. And I think that like it really instilled so many like, I think, values in me, because being able to see how vast the world was, being able to see like so many people's different life experiences as well, and just how like where you live and where you're born in the world completely changes your experience, and what family that you're born into and what time you're born into, like all of these things. And it's really kind of in many ways like a game of luck. And I think that I realized this very young, and I always felt, I think, very lucky for that experience. And really so many of the things that I saw. So for example, like living in the DRC Congo so young, like seeing, it's one of like the poorest countries in the world, and really seeing like how so many people are like really like suffering in their lives. Also, I mean, while I lived there, the war was still going on. Thankfully, I was in Kinshasa, which is like the capital. And so it's not close to the war. It's like on the other side of the country, but even within the capital city, like the richest city in the country, so many of the things that you just would see in everyday life was really like I don't know, there's so many, I think, memories that kind of get like scarred into your brain because you really just, you see like people like sleeping on cardboard boxes and just like real like poverty. At the same time, though, being fortunate enough to be with like the US Embassy, which, especially at the time that I was growing up, I think the US was still the dominant power in the world. I mean, you can argue that it still is, but I think that now there's obviously a lot more like contention and there's
Mm.
so much more we could go into with that. But I think that especially when I started, when my family started, it was in a lot more of a powerful position. And so, yeah, because of that, like the people who I would get to meet, the kids that I would get to meet, like the schools that I would get to go to would be with like the elite of these countries, like the top 1%. And the top 1% a lot of the times like in the world as well. I remember like even in the Congo, like, being able to kind of meet the dictator of the country's daughter at that point in time, who, was my brother's friend, and so many experiences that I got to see through that, and even like later on when I was living in Bahrain and I went to school with a lot of, kids in the royal family and seeing like their experience in life, also like, coming from a first generation American family, and seeing like with my parents who, you know, kind of, really grew up with nothing and created a lot of what they have today, like kind of really understanding, I think, the value of money in a lot of ways. But first and foremost, like also understanding like the value of your mindset and how I would see people like and meet people who came from some of like the worst conditions in the world, but through their mind, through perseverance, and also through, a lot of luck. But at the same time, I really believe that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. Seeing how they were able to build these amazing like legacies and do amazing things in the world. So that was like
Yeah.
an escalator bit.
Wow. Yeah, you've seen so much, and just and I'm sure the audience is gonna get that feel how you really appreciate life. You appreciate the situation. You're always looking for the positive side on everything when we have dialogues, and it's
Yeah.
amazing how you view life and how you persevere and get through all this stuff. It's unbelievable because it's hard right now, right? Which we'll talk about a few of those things. I want to hear how you're doing because I've had a lot of new graduates and even managers hiring new graduates will learn a lot from your stories of what we're going to talk about too. Wow. So now, a little side note, I remember like seeing a picture of you with you like 7 or 8. I'm not sure. You were young, right? Because you're tall and you weren't tall in this picture. And so I think 7 or 8, and you were with Hillary Clinton. How did that happen? And I think your family was in that picture too, but there was a lot of people in that. Like, what was that about? I'd love to hear a little bit about that, if you could share it.
That was a time when I was living in Congo, at least some of that time. And so Hillary Clinton was a Secretary of State for under the first Obama administration from 2004 to 2008. And she was a Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State is essentially the person who's, I would say, like, it's equivalent to like the foreign minister in like the UK. It's like the person who really focuses on like international relations and helps not only like create, but also create the president's vision and the party's vision in terms of foreign policy. She was coming to Congo, so we got to meet her. And it was really cool. And like I've been able to also meet like I met Mike Pompeo under the Trump administration when I was living in Bahrain. I met also John Kerry when I was living in Sri Lanka under the second Obama administration. So yeah, like it was so crazy, like looking back, meeting like so many of these people at a young age. I think that it really like I think messed up my perception of reality, but in like the best way possible, because I think that being able to meet these people who are like, really like power players, like in the world, like on the world stage, like so young, made me like realize like, oh, these are just people, like, and it made me think, oh, this is literally just like a woman, like, what's the difference between like me and her, except maybe some years. And I think back to like that occasion of like meeting Hillary, and my mom always like tells me how my brother and I were like super adorable when we were younger. And so she saw us and she was like, oh, like I want to start with them and I want to talk to them. And we had like a quick exchange. I remember I was like really shy when I was younger, but I remember like especially like how I felt around her, you know? And I remember her presence as well. And it just felt like, I don't know, she just felt like a very powerful person. And I really was like, yeah, it's possible, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought that was amazing because I mean, obviously, I've never met her. I've never met anyone at those levels. That's great. And then and you had a little dialogue and really got to see they're just people, just like us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you know, and obviously they're in such high level positions. They can really change the world with what they say and what they do.
Yeah.
But they're really, when you boil it down, they're just people, right? So
Yeah.
which I think is great to have a young person think that way because a lot of them don't, right? Because
Yeah.
and I believe that too. Like everyone's just people. They all have their
Yeah.
challenges. They all are doing their best. They're all hustling. They're all whatever it is, right? And that just makes things, I think, life easier when you have that kind of perspective, which you have already. That's when you had when you were, very, very young. Wow.
Thank you. I mean, everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, you know?
Yep. Yep, I do. At least I try to. We'll see. But so let's see. So another thing I want. So you went to school in the Netherlands. Like, why the Netherlands? Like,
Yeah.
or Amsterdam. I'm sorry, Amsterdam University, right? Like what drew you there instead of because you were so many places across the world.
Mhm.
Why in Amsterdam? Why Amsterdam University?
Yeah, so all of my life, pretty much, I really thought I was going to go to university in the States, and I really like honestly wanted to as well. It wasn't until my like final 2 years of university, where I was going to like a British school in Bahrain called St. Chris, and yeah, I mean it was a British school, so we all had to prepare like our applications for British universities. We didn't have to send them, but we at least had to get everything together. And I remember I was already kind of thinking before, like, oh, I mean, I'm preparing them, might as well just send them. But it wasn't until COVID hit in like February of 2020 for us, and our school shut down, and my family and I, we went back to DC, and I met up with one of my old friends, like my old friends from when I lived in Sri Lanka, and yeah, we met up and we just started talking about our lives, like our futures and what we like envisioned for ourselves. And she was like, oh, I'm thinking about going to university in like Poland or like Germany. And I had not really heard like too many people like say that. And especially too many like American people say that because so many of the schools that I was in, most of the kids wanted to go to the States, and all the American kids went to the States. I mean, we do have some of the and a lot of the best universities in the world. There's like millions of kids who try to come here every single year just for our education, and especially like Massachusetts as well. And yeah, so I was really like inquiring and just really curious and asked her about it. And she was talking about how like so much of the time you really get like the same quality of education. I mean, unless if you're going to, I don't know, like a crazy, top school, like you're still getting like the same quality of education. And both me and her are really into like traveling, seeing the world. She also grew up like the same way that I did. I think she's even lived in more countries than I have. And she was like, you get to go and have a really cool like cultural experience as well. And you get to go to a different country. I mean, so many of these like countries, especially in Europe, are so international as well. And so you get to meet people from all around the world, all around Europe. And I was like, I don't know if I'd go to Poland or Germany, but I would go to Amsterdam. That was like my first thought. And I think it really like planted a seed. And I remember not too long ago after that, I just started like thinking about it and kind of like playing with the idea. And I was driving in the car with my mom and I was like, oh, like, what do you think about me going to university in Amsterdam? And she was like, oh, like your uncle actually went there. And just as time unfolded and like life unfolded, it just showed me more and more and more that this was just like the decision for me and the place for me. And I think that honestly, it definitely was. I think that it was such a cool experience. I mean, I went to Amsterdam and I moved there and I'd never been to the Netherlands before. Like yeah, I'd never been there. And yeah, it was really amazing. And I think that that whole university experience is really me taking a bet on myself, me trusting myself, me leaning into, the person that I want to be, like me being bold. My quote is fortune favors the bold. And I think that fortune definitely did favor me, coming out of it.
Well, and you got your degree in
In finance.
finance,
Yes.
and then when did like fintech come into your mind, right? Because obviously you focus on finance. I don't know if they in Amsterdam University they talk about fintech. Do they even say the word? But then you showed up at Boston Fintech Week. That's how we met. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that transition, and for other finance students that are thinking about, oh, fintech, maybe that's because I have my finance background, but I don't know if I want to really do finance. So,
Yeah.
so what was your thought process? Just to share, because I'm sure there's lots of students and even many people in the work world right now in finance thinking, oh, what about a fintech career?
Yeah. So in terms of my decision to study finance, so how it works at the UvA, like the University of Amsterdam, is you do like 1.5 or like 2 years of just like your general business courses, and then after at the end you do your specialization. It's like a 3-year course. And so I was going through the business courses, and actually I come in knowing that I wanted to do finance. To be honest, going to university, I really didn't know what I wanted to do like in my life. I think it is kind of crazy that our society expects 16, 17, 18-year-olds to choose like a path that they're supposed to follow like their entire life. And I remember just really not knowing what to do, and I was just like, okay, well, I feel like finance, it can only benefit me to learn about these systems of how money works in our world, how banks work, how being an investor works. This knowledge is so powerful like in our world. Like the quote, money makes the world go round, right? Like knowing how money works will I think can never like do you wrong. So that was kind of like my mindset going into it. And I went to University of Amsterdam, and I actually it was so tough because I'd never studied before university. And so I like completely got like my behind kicked by this university, and I was like failing so many courses. Like it wasn't that I wasn't trying, but I just had to learn how to study. And I was trying, and especially like the math courses, I had so much trouble with them. And I remember like I think I did have some belief that was like, oh, you're not good at math, but also, yeah, I mean, my track record didn't necessarily look good. So I remember at a certain point, I was really like, okay, is this for me? Like, is finance for me? And I remember someone told me like, so much of finance is not even like the numbers. It's about like the way of thinking. And so I really leaned into that, and I went through with my finance specialization, and I was like so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, can I do it? But I was like, I'm at least gonna give it a try. And I ended up like falling in love with finance, and I ended up becoming also like one of the best students like in the specialization, like not just because I like studied, but just because I actually genuinely really loved it. And what I love like so much about like finance is really like how it's like this whole system that really I think reflects human nature in so many ways, especially when you think about like investor mentality, how markets work. And as someone who's really into psychology, it's just like super fascinating to me. That being said, I also knew that, okay, I don't think I necessarily want to go into like a traditional finance field. I think that I think that, I don't know, I think I'm a very like colorful person, so to say, and I don't necessarily know if I would fit in with at least a lot of like the culture. I mean, that could just be a generalization, but I mean, that's kind of like what I took away. And so I think even then I knew, okay, um, I don't really want to work at a bank. Like I want to work, maybe like look for else places. Like, I mean, pretty much every like business needs to manage their money. So there's a lot of opportunity. So when I was like in my final year, I had already like been applying to jobs. I did like my congressional internship also during my university years. I think I did it during the summer between my second and my third year. And I really loved it. And that was also really amazing experience within itself. As I told you, like I literally met Nancy Pelosi like on my first day there. That being said, I think that experience also made me realize like I don't I love this and I love so many aspects of this, but I don't think this is necessarily for me, you know? And so yeah, continuing applying, and I just was like not really getting like that many responses. I mean, to be honest, I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life at that point. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep on applying, but I have so much to figure out. So as time went on, you know, like I graduated and I was still applying. And this is, I think, when really like what everyone was saying about like the job market and um kind of all of this stuff going on really, I think, hit me. And yeah, I remember I graduated like in November. I moved back, and I only like I started my new position like I think 2 months ago, so December 1st. So I was applying to jobs in the States like alone for like a year and a month, you know. But at the same time, I'm such a believer of like everything happens for a reason, and I think that that year and a month was so like life changing because it was just so much like silence, and it really, you know, forced me to sit with myself and really question like everything in my life and question, most importantly, like what do I want to do with my life and with my experiences moving forward. And I really like, you know, got introduced into the world of entrepreneurship, the world of startups. I got so much more introduced into, you know, AI, and also, you know, the universe of like technology and like the history of technology in our world, you know, through a whole different like perspective as well, and seeing the power of technology. And also that being said, seeing how much, you know, especially like fintech has already helped improve my life and shape my life and, you know, the world around us. And I think also like the big future that it has ahead. So that's kind of how my thinking process went. And so I was doing like a lot of like, you know, in-person volunteering events. At the same time, I was doing a lot of job searching. And I remember I was doing like Techstars, and I was at the reception, and I remember I met Meg. Shout out to Meg. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we're actually having
Meg from FinTech Sandbox."
Yes, yes. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we're actually having an event in September if you want to also come." And I was like, "Yeah." And then that's how I ended up FinTech
Wow.
Boston Week, or Boston FinTech Week. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And at the Boston Fed.
Yeah.
So the thing that's interesting there too, so makes to make you feel better or to make me feel better, either one way. So when I first went to school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. This was back in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
High school was 84 for me, right? I grew up in Massachusetts, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my mother just said, I wanted to play basketball. That's all I wanted to do, right? So that was it. And my mother goes, be an accountant. They'll always need accountants. And I'm like, okay. So that's what I did. I really had no, I just went for it. And just by doing it, you know, I graduated with an accounting degree, right? And also there's a lot of finance in there too, but true, like, you know, 9 courses of accounting. And I realized, and I don't know if I really want to do this. And I ended up doing it for like a year and a half or so, but I ended up getting more into technology. That's why I always say I was doing fintech before it had a cool name, right? So I was into the technology side, the data side, and the accounting and finance side. And then I toggle back and forth. That's why I was always considering myself a fintech, but there was never that name wasn't until the last few years ago, right? So
Yeah.
So yeah, you never know where I mean, in what you like the story you just told, the great story. I mean, university and going to college, you're just learning how to learn. You're just learning how to grow up. You're just learning how to communicate with people in different ways, and you're learning from so many different people. And like, what do I do? And so that in life is still that way. Every day at work, you're learning, and it gives you those fundamentals because the technology is going to change. I mean, finance will be finance, but with fintech, it's changing all the time. And like, what's an investment anymore? What's a bank anymore? Like, I mean, because technology is changing it. So it's all about learning how to learn, which you just at a very young age, know that already, just from so many places and how you approach life. So to make
Thank
you feel
you.
better. And one thing I should have said even earlier on, right? Because my mother, who said, she was a school psychologist for the behavioral school systems, which you learned about in the Art of You. By the way, everyone, Art of You is a video on personal branding, and I use myself as a guinea pig, and how I figured out my own personal brand and how it made life easier, not easy, easier, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's the video that Bernice was doing a rewatch of. Please come back to part 2 with Bernice Tsewole, as Bernice goes deeper into what she thinks about today's job market, her experience in networking, and where she sees herself in the next 10 years. Thank you for listening to What the Heck Fintech. Make sure you tune into our next episode as we continue to interview fintech leaders and share real-world stories from across the fintech ecosystem, so you can fully understand that fintech is fin life.